my career originally, and still now, like I suppose, is a journalist. Although I've always had like job titles and careers that have sort of been slightly embarrassing, because even journalists, you think, oh, what, investigative journalism, you're speaking truth to power, right? You're exposing corruption within government. No, I watch TV for a living. And right, for me, the idea of a big scoop is like that time I interviewed the Jonas Brothers or something. It's not quite speaking truth to power, although I don't know. But my background was as an entertainment journalist. I spent a lot of time writing about TV for a living, and I found myself in kind of 2011, 2012, knowing a number of people, 2 or 3 people who were doing the YouTube thing. Charlie McDonnell, Alex Day, and sort of within my socials, from them knowing a few other people like you. I'd heard of a Myles Dyer. I wasn't quite sure what he did.
What's remarkable in the timeline is 2012 is quite a long time ago. But
for me, I'm struggling as a man to even just describing what becoming YouTubers.
I regard that as old school. But that was halfway through my YouTube time, because I started in 2006.
Yeah.
That's quite bizarre to think about.
I mean, I wasn't like, oh god, I feel so old. 2012. I mean, 2012 does just feel like. I mean, if you asked me and I didn't have time to think about it, I'd say, it was 3 years ago. Oh no, maybe 4. It was fucking 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Like Jesus Christ. And so I was kind of intrigued by this was before people really knew what YouTubers were. It was still very kind of niche, this little kind of world, this weird sort of community. And so I sort of wanted in on it. It's like, this looks fun, like just making stuff with your mates. That's the best possible thing, right? Creative endeavors with friends. And I wanted to make a documentary about it. I wanted to sort of have my cake and eat it, essentially. I wanted to become a YouTuber, whilst also documenting it. And so over the course of about a year, I filmed this 12-part documentary series called Becoming YouTube, which, as I said earlier, was sort of half documentary, and there was some serious stuff in there, and it genuinely did try and analyze the YouTube world.
There was a lot of talking heads.
Heads. You were one of the talking heads, but it kept sort of doing sketches and silly stuff and sort of fantasy sequences. It was also sort of born out of the idea of what happens if you. I was fascinated by building up something you mentioned a bit about with this podcast. What happens if you about building up an audience, and an audience's loyalty to a creator and all that sort of stuff. The idea I had was to build up an audience over the course of 10 episodes, and then round about episode 10, tell everyone to fuck off. Like literally look down the barrel of the lens and say, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Please leave me alone. And that's what we did. And then burst into song. And so it was sort of this weird kind of mishmash of a series, but it came around at a time when, like, the mainstream media was just starting, whatever that means, but newspapers and
sure.
telly was just starting to show an interest in YouTubers. Every headline in every newspaper about YouTubers would be the same thing. It would be Myles Dyer, the most famous person you've never heard of. It would always be that, the most famous person you've never heard of. Whereas now, cut forward 7 years and you've got Joe Sugg doing Strictly. Like, YouTubers are mainstream, but back then they weren't. So people. No. A lot of mainstream media outlets kind of pounced on Becoming YouTube and used it as a case study or as a basis of an article, or I was being interviewed for newspapers and everything from sort of appearing on Woman's Hour to being interviewed on by NME to everything to sort of to talk about this new phenomena. It sounds weird to say it now in 2019, but it was back then a new phenomena, like the YouTuber, the social media star. And so, that's sort of what Becoming YouTube is. And it's still available online at youtube.com/9brassmonkeys. Yeah, that's it.